Good evening, and welcome to Worlds Before Morning. Tonight, we are going somewhere cold, so that you can feel warmer where you are. A small farm in the far north. 1,000 years ago, on the last evening of a long winter storm, there's a wooden house with a grass roof under deep snow, and one door and one fire. Everything that matters tonight happens within reach of that fire. Before we walk down there, take a moment for yourself. Dim the lights if you haven't already. Set the phone somewhere it can't ask anything of you. Pull the blanket a little higher, and let your shoulders come down slowly, the way snow settles on a roof. If these quiet nights help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe, but only if it truly helps. And tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. I like to think of all those distant rooms, going dark one by one. That's the last thing I'll ask of you. From here on, there is only the snow, the fire, and the story. Tonight you'll come home across the ice with the last sledge of the day. You'll help bring the animals in and eat barley porridge by the long fire and hear an old story told in a low voice. And when the wind rises after midnight, you'll be glad, in that simple ancient way, to be indoors among sleeping people. And one thing more before we set out. If you drift off somewhere along the way in the byre, by the fire under the stars, that is not a failure of listening. That is the story doing its work. It knows the way to morning without you, and it will walk the last miles alone, quiet as a house at night. Sleep whenever sleep comes. The snow is beginning again. Let's go down before the light does. It is late afternoon, and the light is already leaving. In deep winter, this far north, the day is only a pale gray visitor. It arrives after breakfast, stays low along the hills, and slips away before the work is done. You are on the shore path above the fjord, and the snow under your boots makes the only sound in the world. You've been down at the water since midday, with the farmer's eldest son and the dog. There were fish to bring up from the drying racks, stiff as boards in the cold, and a load of driftwood worth more than silver on a treeless shore. Now the sledge runs behind you on its worn wooden runners, and the rope pulls steady against your shoulder. The fjord below is black and perfectly still. Ice has closed the shallows, and farther out, the deep water lies like poured iron. No boats now. The boats were drawn up on land months ago, turned over and covered, sleeping their own winter sleep. Nobody sails in this season. Even the sea, people say, has to rest sometime. The afternoon's work sits behind you, plain and finished. The drying racks stand in their long rows above the tide line, tall frames of lashed poles, and the cod hung there in autumn has cured slowly in the salt wind. Fish dried this way keeps for a year or more. It fed this coast, and it fed half the world beyond it, though nobody on this shore would put it so grandly. They would only say the racks were full, and that full racks make an easy heart. The driftwood was the day's real luck, a whole pale trunk, stranded by the autumn storms and found this morning under new snow. On a coast with few tall trees, the sea is the forest. It carries timber down from rivers far to the east and lays it, now and then, at the feet of whoever walks the shore first. The farmer marked it with his sign at first light, and the neighbors honor the mark as he honors theirs. You walk with your face half turned from the wind, the old way, letting the hood take the weather. Your mittens are the thick lopped wool that the women loop by the fire, dense as felt, and inside them your fingers curl around warmth of their own making. Breathe through the nose, slow and shallow, and the air arrives gentled. The cold is not an enemy up here. It is simply the landlord, and everyone knows the terms. Far along the other shore, one or two sparks of amber show where the neighbor farms sit under the same hills. Smoke from their roofs climbs thin and straight before the wind takes it. Between the farms lies nothing but white slope and black water, an hour's hard walking. And yet those little lights are company. Whole winters are softened by the sight of another fire across a valley. Snow starts to fall again, unhurried, in flakes so wide you can hear them touch your hood. The hills across the water soften and fade, as if someone were pulling a wool blanket over the whole valley. It isn't frightening, this fading. It's the world putting itself away for the night. The dog trots ahead, sure of the path. He has made this walk 1,000 times, and his tracks stitch a neat line up the slope. Where the path bends at the old birch, you catch it, the first sight of home. A long, low shape against the hillside, roof heavy with snow, and from the smoke hole, a soft gray thread rising, glowing faintly orange from below. Someone has kept the fire fed. Someone always does. That thin line of smoke means everything up here. It means the house is alive, and supper is coming, and the day's cold has an ending. You lean into the last climb. The rope creaks, the runners hiss. Your breath drifts back past your ear. Up by the house, a small figure stands in the doorway, holding the leather curtain aside, letting a stripe of firelight fall out across the blue snow. They've seen you. The light is for you. The last stretch is the steep one, past the wood pile and the covered well. You take it slowly, the way everyone takes it, leaning on the rope. The house grows as you climb. First the roof line, then the low door in its deep frame, then the smell of the smoke itself, birch and warmth and supper. Your body knows this smell, the way it knows your own name. Something in your chest unclenches a notch with every step. At the door you stamp the snow from your boots, twice each, on the worn stone put there for stamping. The sledge is drawn up under the eaves, and its load lashed down for the night. Tomorrow the fish will be carried to the storeroom, and the driftwood cut. Tomorrow. The word has a good weight to it up here. It means there is a warm night between you and everything left to do. Outside the snow keeps falling. Inside the fire holds, and you are almost there. Before anyone eats, the animals are seen too. That is the oldest rule of the farm, older than the house itself, and no one questions it. The beasts kept people alive through winter, so people kept them close, not in a distant barn, but in the byre, under the same long roof, at the far end of the house. You set down the sledge rope by the door and go around to help. The farmer is already there with a birch bark lantern, its little flame steady behind thin walls of bark. The sheep come first, unhurried, complaining softly, shaking snow from their thick winter wool. One by one, they pass through the low byre door, and the warmth of the room breathes out to meet them. It's a particular warmth, the byres. Hay and animal hide and old timber, all mixed into one deep, settled smell. People from the cities of the South might wrinkle their noses at it, but here that smell is wealth. It means the hay lasted. It means the animals are fat enough to steam gently in the lantern light. The 2 cows are brought in next, slow and enormous in the dark, their breath hanging in clouds. Their stall boards are worn smooth, where their sides have rubbed for years. Then the old horse, who needs no lighting. He walks his own way to his own place, as he has done every evening of his long life, and sighs down into the straw. Each animal is known here the way family is known. The lead ewe is the oldest of the sheep, heavy-fleeced and certain of her rights, and the others settle only after she settles. One of the cows will calve toward spring. She is given the deeper straw and the corner out of the draft, and everyone, human and animal, seems to understand the arrangement. A handful of hens have their roost up on a beam, already tucked into themselves like round loaves, muttering softly at the lantern as it passes. The hay is measured out with a practiced eye, enough and not more. Up in the loft above the stalls, the summer's grass is stacked to the roof, And that stack is the true calendar of the farm. The household reads it the way sailors read the sky. So many armfuls a day, so many days to green pastures. And the winter is only ever as long as the hay allows. This year the stack is deep. You can feel what that means in how easily the farmer laughs. Water is carried in from the trough by the door, where melted snow waits under a lid of birch wood. The cows drink long and slow, lifting their dripping mouths to breathe, then drinking again. In the stillness you can hear it all distinctly. The pull of water, the shifting straw, the small bells of the ewes knocking wood as they crowd toward the hay. Every animal in this row has a name, of course, and the names are as inherited as the stalls. The lead ewe carries the name that lead ewes of this farm have carried past remembering, so that 4 generations of shepherds have called the same word up the same hillside. One cow is named for a flower, one for the color of a storm sky, and the old horse bears the name of a wind, the good steady one from the south that brings the hay weather, which everyone agrees has suited him all his life. The farmer moves along the row with hay, murmuring to each animal in turn. Not words exactly, just low sounds, the kind a person makes when they've worked beside animals since childhood. A hand on a flank here, a scratch behind an ear there. The animals answer with their quiet chewing, which is the sound of a good night beginning. There's a practical genius in this arrangement, hundreds of years in the making. The animals share their body heat with the house through the winter. A dozen sheep, 2 cows, and a horse make a gentle furnace that never quite goes out. In return, they get walls against the wolf wind, and the sound of human voices, which calms them the way it calms us. Winter evenings in the byre have their own unhurried liturgy, and it ends the same way every night. Stalls checked along the row, one hand trailing the rail. The milk pail, mostly for habit's sake this deep in winter, hung back on its peg, the lantern lifted from its hook, so that the shadows of the beast swing slowly across the walls and settle. By the door, the farmer stands a moment and listens, simply listens, to the sound of everything eating. It is a sound worth a moment. A dozen jaws working slow, hay rustling, the horse's deep occasional sigh. In the lean years, the old ones say, you listen to the byre the way you'd listen to a sick child's breathing. In a good year, it is the sound of money in the chest, and meat in spring and milk in summer. It is the farm, audibly continuing. The last one in is the dog. He checks the whole row once, self-appointed and serious, then finds his corner by the inner door. The farmer lifts the heavy bar and sets it across the byre entrance with a soft, final thud. No wind will trouble that door tonight. The snow keeps falling on the roof above them. Below it the fire holds, and the animals chew slowly in the dark, and the house grows warmer by their breath. Not everyone settles indoors just yet. The evening has one more errand in it, and it is the best one of the week. Down the slope behind the house, half dug into the hillside, stands a small turf hut with a stone heart, and tonight its roof is steaming gently through the falling snow. Tonight is washing eve. The people of this coast kept a week with its own small ceremonies, and the finest of them was this. One evening in 7, work stopped early, stones were heated, and the whole household washed the week away. Their name for the day in their old tongue meant simply washing day. It says something about a people, what they name their days for. The bath hut has been readied since afternoon. Someone carried coals down in a covered pot and fed a small fire under a bed of rounded stones, the kind gathered from the stream for exactly this work. Stream stones hold heat the way old men hold opinions. By dusk they are glowing faintly at their edges, and the little hut breathes warmth through its low door. Water comes from the stream itself, through a hole in the ice that the household keeps open all winter with an axe and stubbornness. 2 buckets stand inside the door, skinned with ice from the walk down. They won't stay cold long. You duck through the doorway, and the heat takes you the way the longhouse did, only closer, thicker, darker. There is one small red glow where the stones sit, and benches of split log along the walls, worn smooth by years of sitting. The air smells of hot stone and wet turf and birch. It is a small room, and it is meant to be. Warmth shared is warmth doubled. Then the ladle of water goes onto the stones. The hiss fills the hut like a wave drawing back down a beach, and the steam climbs, and the heat becomes something you wear rather than something you feel. Shoulders you didn't know were raised come slowly down. The weak begins to leave through the skin. There is soap of a kind, ash and tallow boiled together in autumn, soft as old butter and about as glamorous. It is harsh, and it is honest, and it works. The children are scrubbed first, over their standard objections, which the steam melts within a minute. The girl's clean hair squeaks between her mother's fingers, which is the official sound of the job being done. Someone has kept a bundle of birch twigs from summer, leaves still on, dried under the roof, dipped in warm water and swept lightly over the back and arms. It wakes the skin and releases, unmistakably, the smell of a green June. In the middle of a snowbound night, that little hut holds one spoonful of summer. Everyone breathes it without talking about it. After the washing comes the combing. Every soul on this farm owns a comb, carved of bone or antler, kept close the way you keep a knife. Hair is combed out slow and wet by the fire's glow, worked patiently through, braided loosely for sleep. When the old people of this coast were laid in their graves, their combs were often laid beside them. That tells you what they thought of a tidy head. Their neighbors across the water found all this washing suspicious. A churchman in a foreign land once complained, in writing, that the northern men bathed every week and combed their hair far too often, and were therefore unreasonably successful with the ladies of his country. The grandmother tells this one every washing eve. It improves with age, like the soap doesn't. There is talk in the steam, of course, and it is its own kind of talk. Bath talk, slower than supper talk, softer than yard talk, with long, comfortable gaps in it that nobody hurries to fill. The men speak of the ice, and where it can be trusted, of the price, a bale of homespun fetched at the autumn market, of whether the Point Farm's old man will cross this year, once the fjord sets hard. Nothing is decided. Deciding is not what this room is for. The farmer's knees, it must be reported, are grateful in the heat, and say so audibly when he stands. He is not an old man yet, but knees keep their own calendar. Half of what this little hut is for, if you ask the older folk, is exactly this. The week's cold is baked slowly out of the joints, the way damp is baked out of firewood. They come in walking one way, they walk out another, and there is a family legend here too, told whenever the steam is thickest. The grandmother's own grandfather, they say, scorned the Bath hut as a nicety, and washed instead in the sea itself, every washing eve all winter long, walking out through the shore ice with soap in hand and opinions about softness. It has grown in the telling for 3 generations. Nobody can check it now. That is what makes it a perfect story. And everyone in the family privately believes every word. Then comes the run. The door opens on the blue night, and the cold arrives like clean linen, and there is nothing to do but go, barefoot and steaming, the few steps through the snow with your bundle of dry clothes. The boldest roll once in the drift and come up gasping and proud. The rest settle for the cold air alone, which is plenty. Skin that was nearly asleep in the steam now sings. Inside the little entry, wool waits, dry under tunics, warmed at the house fire and carried down, and rough towels, and the particular happiness of being clean, warm, and slightly amazed at yourself. It is one of the oldest luxuries in the world, and it costs the household an armload of wood and a hole in the ice. That is worth sitting with for a moment. In an age of many things, comfort up here is short and honest. Heat, water, a clean shirt against clean skin, a week folded up and put away. Nobody in this hut has ever wanted for more than that, at least not on this particular evening. You walk back up the slope with your hair steaming faintly in the dark, boots unlaced, entirely at peace. Behind you, the bath hut sighs its last steam into the night and begins to cool toward next week. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Inside you now, somehow, the fire holds. Washed and dressed and warm, you would be forgiven for heading straight to the benches. But a farm asks one more small duty before it lets anyone sleep, and the farmer would no more skip it than skip breathing. The last round of the yard. He takes the lantern from its peg, and you go with him. And the dog comes too, because in his opinion the round is his. Every farm in the north walks this circle at night, each in its own order, worn into the feet like a path into grass. It isn't worry exactly. It is the same thing you do to a knot you have already tied well. You put your hand on it once more, and then you can forget it till morning. First the wood pile, standing against the byre wall under its little roof of boards and snow. Split birch stacked in courses, silver gray ends out. A wood pile is a ledger anyone can read. This end, cut 2 summers back, is for burning now. That end, still bright, is for winters that haven't happened yet. A farm's wealth is counted in dry wood at least as honestly as in silver, and this pile says the household can afford to be calm. Then the well, with its heavy wooden lid, and the stone that sits on the lid like a paperweight on an important letter. The rope is stiff with frost and creaks against its post. Under the lid, far down, black water waits out the winter, patient as only water is. The farmer checks the stone with his boot. Storms have opinions about lids. The hay comes next. The great stack by the byre wears a net of ropes, and from the ropes hang stones, swinging just slightly, keeping the whole summer's grass pressed down against the wind. He tugs each rope in passing, 1, 2, 3, an old rhythm. When a gust lifts the skirt of the stack, there is a breath of July in it, sweet and impossible, gone at once. At the boat shed, he only lays his palm flat against the door, the way you might touch the shoulder of a sleeping friend. Inside, hull up on its blocks, the family boat is wintering, tarred and covered, dreaming whatever boats dream. The smell of pine tar seeps through the boards even in frost. The sledge stands ready by the wall, because winter is the sledge's season, and it knows it. Between the house door and the byre door runs a rope on low posts, and he checks that too, though it never moves. In the worst of the white storms, when a man cannot see his own mittens, that rope is the road. You go hand over hand and count the posts. People on this coast could lose their own yard in the wrong hour, and in older winters, some did. So the rope stays, year on year, mostly unused, entirely necessary. The dog runs his own inspection meanwhile, an expert making his rounds. Each corner is examined and approved. At the yard's edge, he stands a moment facing the dark hills and delivers one formal bark, addressed to whom it may concern, contents classified. Duty done, he returns, entirely satisfied with himself and the night. At the gap between buildings, the farmer stops and turns his face up, and stands quite still, reading. The wind has swung, the air has that pact held in feeling, and the ring that circled the moon at dusk has closed its account. More snow is coming, more than fell today, and behind it wind. His mother said as much at supper with one look. He silently agrees with her now, and will not say so at breakfast either. Families run on such treaties. Below, up the whole shore, the fjord lies black and unfinished, ice shelving out pale from the land and open water beyond it, dark as the inside of a closed hand. No sail will cross it now, until spring opens the sea road again. Winter closes that door and keeps the key, and the whole coast simply plans around it, as you plan around a sleeping giant. The lantern itself is on rations, like everything else. Tallow candles are counted in autumn and meant to last, so the lantern burns the stub ends, the crooked ones, the candles too humble for the table. Light for walking is not light for working. The grandmother rules, and the ruling is final. Nobody minds, for finding a latch you have found 5,000 times. A stub end is riches. The lantern makes a small traveling circle of gold on the snow, and your shadows walk beside you like tall, quiet strangers. The first flakes of the next snow are already coming down, big ones, scouts ahead of an army. They land on the lantern glass and vanish with the smallest imaginable sound. The drying shed gets a look as well, where the last of the shore fish hang in stiff rows out of the weather. The farmer raps one with a knuckle in passing, and it answers like a board, which is the correct answer. Fish that knocks is fish that keeps. Come spring, softened and buttered, it will taste far better than a thing that knocks has any right to. By the gate stands a plain stick, taller than a man, with old notch marks up its side, and the lantern pauses on it. The snow stick. Every farm keeps one, and the winter is read against it week by week, the way a child is measured against a doorpost. Tonight the snow stands at the third notch. The old ones can tell you, for any winter of their lives, what notch it reached and when. Winters here have biographies, and once before the door, the farmer simply stands and listens downhill, head tilted, doing nothing at all that you could name. Far below, the new ice mutters along the shore, working itself tighter, a low grinding sigh that carries up through the still air. He is listening to how the freeze is going, the way you'd listen to bread baking. A few more nights of this, and the fjord will be a road. The whole shore is waiting for that door to open. Last, the latches, each checked by hand because hands are trusted here above memory. The byre bar, lifted a finger's width and set back. The grain shed hasp, cold enough to bite through mittens. Each latch has its own voice, a clack or a knock or a wooden grumble, and the farmer knows them all by ear, the way you know the coughs of your own family. At the house door he pauses, and you both look back once. The yard stands white and squared away. The buildings hold their snow like old men holding their hats. Everything that can be done before morning has been done, and something in the chest quietly sets down a load it had been carrying since dusk. Outside now, the snow can do as it pleases. Inside, the fire holds. The farmer lifts the latch and holds the leather curtain aside for you. You come in through the main door, past the leather curtain, and the house takes you in all at once. The warmth, the wood smoke, the amber light. After hours of blue snowlight, your eyes need a moment. Let them rest. There's nothing here that needs to be seen quickly. The longhouse is one great room, shaped like a ship turned upside down. Tall timber posts march down its length in 2 rows, holding up a roof lost in comfortable darkness. And down the middle of the earthen floor, in a long stone-lined trench, runs the fire itself. Not a fireplace in a wall, but an open hearth as long as 3 beds laid end to end, burning low and even. This fire is the true owner of the house. Everything else arranges itself around it. The wide sleeping benches along both walls, layered with sheepskins. The loom in the corner, with its stone weights hanging still. The iron pot on its chain. All of it faces the fire, the way everything in a harbor faces the sea. Above the hearth, strung from the rafters on their winter lines, hang the practical constellations of the house, bundles of dried herbs for the pot and for eggs, rings of flatbread on a pole, baked hard for keeping, a pair of skin shoes someone has greased and hung to take the grease slowly, the way shoes prefer. Everything hangs at exactly the height where fire warmth lives and floor cold doesn't reach. A border every housewife on this coast could draw blindfolded. Firelight is a different kind of light. It doesn't shine so much as breathe. It swells and settles, and the shadows of the roof posts sway gently with it, like tall grass in slow water. High above, the smoke finds its way out through the smoke hole. The roof beams up there are glazed black with the soot of 100 winters. The old grandmother sits nearest the warmth, on the bench with the best view of the flames, as is her right. She has watched this fire her whole life. She fed it as a girl, tended it as a mother, and now it warms her hands in the evening of her years. When she pushes a birch log deeper with the iron poker, sparks rise in a soft column. They wink out among the rafters. The house itself was raised by the family that lives in it, and by their neighbors, in the way of all building here. Walls of turf and stone, thick as a stride, laid up around a skeleton of precious timber. Turf keeps warmth the way wool does, by holding 1,000 small pockets of stillness. And a house like this wears the hillside itself as a coat. From a distance in summer, they say, you can hardly tell the roof from the meadow. Sheep sometimes graze up there, which everyone finds funnier the older the joke gets. Light in the evenings comes from the hearth first, and after it from small stone lamps filled with fish oil, their wicks of twisted moss. Each lamp gives about as much light as a cupped hand can hold. And so the house is not lit the way your world is lit. It is pooled. Little rooms of glow around each lamp, and soft dark between them. And people move from pool to pool with their work in their hands. Everyone has their place along the benches, worn into familiarity by years of the same elbows. The farmer's seat is midway down the hall, flanked by 2 carved posts that came from his grandfather's house before this one. Nothing here is new, and that is not a lack. A thing that has served 3 generations has proven it deserves the 4th. People say the fire must never fully die, and in a practical sense, that's simply true. There were no matches in this world. Starting a flame from cold flint and steel, in a frozen dawn with numb fingers, was slow and uncertain work. So the household guarded its embers the way it guarded its children. Fire was not lit here. Fire was kept. A house like this has its own geography of warmth, and everyone in it navigates by feel. Closest to the fire is for wet boots and cold hands, and the very old. The middle benches are for work and supper. The far ends, toward the gables, are cool, and that is where the milk stands and the ale keeps. Even the dog knows the map. He lies exactly where the warmth of the hearth fades into the warmth of the byre. At the crossing point of the houses, 2 mild climates. Listen to the house for a moment, underneath the voices. The fire has a language of small sounds, ticks and sighs, and the occasional soft collapse of a log settling into its own glow. The wind draws one thin note over the smoke hole, like breath over a bottle. Behind the inner wall, a sheep coughs unbothered. Timber knocks once, somewhere high, as the roof takes up the snow's new weight and agrees to it. The fire is fed a considered diet, too, because wood is knowledge here like everything else. Birch is the daily bread of it, steady and clean and sweet-smoked. Pine goes in when a quick heat is wanted, snapping and enthusiastic and soon over, the puppy of firewoods. And now and then, on an evening with guests or a story in it, a piece of dried driftwood is laid on, seawood, and burns with faint whispers of blue and green along its edges. the salt of its old voyages showing at the last. The children would watch driftwood burn all night if permitted. Tonight one piece. It is that kind of evening. You find a place on the bench, and the heat begins to work on you. It starts at your face and hands, then moves inward, slow and thorough. Your boots steam faintly. Someone hands you a dry woolen blanket that smells of smoke and lanolin. And the last of the fjord's cold lets go of your back. Outside, the snow keeps falling, softer now. Inside, the fire holds, as it has held for 100 years, and means to hold for 100 more. Supper on a winter farm is not a feast. It is something better. It is the same warm food, at the same hour, in the same worn wooden bowls. And there is a deep comfort in that sameness that no feast can match. The farmer's wife swings the iron pot off its chain and stirs it once, slowly. Barley porridge, thick and pale, cooked soft over the long fire through the afternoon. She drops a piece of butter into each bowl, where it melts into a small golden pool. Butter is the farm's treasure, churned in autumn and packed away in wooden tubs. And a winter with enough butter is counted a good winter. The bowls go around in the old order, elders first, then the children, then everyone else. Nobody planned this order. It simply grew, the way a path grows across a field. You wrap your hands around your bowl and let the heat soak into your palms before you take the first spoonful. The porridge tastes of the whole year. The barley was seed in spring, green field in summer, and sheaves on the drying poles in the wind of early autumn. Now it is warmth itself, eaten in the dark season by the people who grew it. Alongside it there's flatbread baked on a stone, and dried fish from the racks by the shore, torn into strips and dipped in more butter. And there is skyer, the soft white food halfway between cheese and cream, kept cool in the storeroom. The children eat theirs too fast and look hopefully at the pot. On most nights there is a little more. On this night there is. Behind the meal stands the storeroom, and behind the storeroom stands the whole busy year. Barrels of herring put down in brine at the autumn runs, smoked lamb hanging dark from the rafters, saved for the midwinter feast and the first spring work, whey in wooden casks, sharp and clean, preserving what summer could not keep any other way. A basket of hazelnuts, a small crock of honey traded from the south, opened only when someone is ill or newly born or newly married. The iron pot itself is a treasure with a history. Iron came far, by ship and by pack and by barter, and a good cauldron passed from mother to daughter along with the songs. This one has fed the household for longer than the eldest son has been alive. Its bottom is burnished from years of the chain. It even has a name, as most beloved tools here do, though the family would be shy to tell a stranger what it is. The butter was churned in the bright months. The cows stood belly-deep in meadow grass then, and gave with both hands. Salt for keeping it came partly by trade and partly from seaweed burned on the shore. A slow, smoky chore the children claim to hate and secretly enjoy. All that gathered summer is on the table now, in the dark of the year, doing exactly what it was saved to do. Talk at supper is low and unhurried, and it is nearly all about the weather, not as small talk, as the news of the world. The wind has turned from the sea. The storm will blow itself out by morning, the farmer thinks. The grandmother is not so sure, and says the sky had a waiting look at dusk. This mild disagreement will be settled by the sky itself, in its own time, and both of them know it. There is talk, too, of the midwinter feast, now not far off. The best of everything waits for it. The smoked lamb will come down from the rafters then, and the strong ale, brewed dark in autumn, will be opened at last, and neighbors will cross the valley on skis with lanterns to share it. The children count toward it, the way children count toward all bright things. The grown ones pretend not to, and count anyway. The ale itself is a homely art, barley malted in the autumn, the whole house smelling sweet for days, and the brewing kept to rules half practical and half simply inherited. Every farm's ale tastes of that farm, people say, the water and the wood and the hand that made it. Traders may bring wine to the great halls of the South. Up here, the valley drinks its own hills. A cup of thin ale goes around, brewed weak for every day. Someone mentions the ice on the fjord, how it sang this morning, that long, deep note ice makes when it settles. The children are told, again, not to walk out past the point. They nod, in the way children nod at a rule they've heard 100 times from people who love them. The table has its manners, unwritten and unbreakable. Each person owns their spoon, carved to their own hand, kept in their own place on the shelf. And lending a spoon is a small intimacy, like lending a name. Each carries their own knife and uses it and wipes it and puts it away, from the farmer down to the girl, whose knife is small and whose pride in it is not. And at the end of the bench, nearest the door, one place stays open, not set exactly, just never quite filled. Any traveler who came in out of that snow tonight would find there was somehow room, and would be fed without one question until he had finished. The questions are dessert. The bowls are wiped clean with the last of the bread. Nothing is wasted here in winter. Not food, not firewood, not worry. The evening meal ends the way it began, without ceremony, and the night's smaller, softer work begins. The snow keeps falling past the smoke hole. The fire holds under the empty pot, and the house settles a little deeper into its evening. Before the evening settles into its long quiet, the farmer does what farmers here have always done after supper. He goes to the door, opens it the width of a hand, and asks the sky about tomorrow. The sky rarely answers plainly. He asks anyway, every night of his life. The cold slides in through the gap, thin and polite, and wakes the room half a degree. After a warm meal, that sliver of night air is almost pleasant, the way a cold pillow is pleasant. You drift over and look out past his shoulder, into the blue-black evening, and there they are. Lights, across the water and along the shore, small and gold and impossibly steady, each one sunk in its own hillside of white. One below the point, two along the far strand, one high on the shoulder of the ridge, where you'd swear nothing could live. Each of them is a farm. Each of them is a room like this one, with a fire down the middle and wet boots steaming and someone scolding a dog. The light below the point is the old man who crossed the ice that famous winter, every single day, to lose at the board game in other people's houses. He is older now than anyone can properly prove, and still sharp. It is generally suspected that he loses on purpose, because winning is lonely, and losing comes with supper. The two lights on the far strand belong to the widow and her 3 grown sons. Her woodpile is cut by many hands, and not all of them are her sons' hands either. Nobody organized that. The valley does its arithmetic quietly, and a household short of an axe arm finds its wood cut, its hay hauled, its roof looked at, all somehow without a single meeting being held. The high light is the new croft, the young couple in their first winter. Their lamp burns latest of anyone's, because new householders check everything twice and believe in their bones that no one else ever lay awake like this. Everyone else remembers being them. After the storm, someone will ski over with a crock of butter or a sack of feathers. Just passing, no occasion, none needed. In the hardest weeks of winter, the farms read each other by smoke. Every roof on this shore sends up its gray thread by mid-morning, and every household, without quite admitting it, counts the threads. A roof standing cold past its hour would put skis on feet across the whole valley, without a word being sent. They say that quiet habit has saved folk here more than once. Nobody wrote the times down. Nobody needed to. By land, the nearest of those lights is half a day's walking around the shore. On skis over the crusted snow, an hour. And yet on a still night, the valley talks to itself across the water. A dog barks by the point, and the dog in this byre answers on principle. An axe rings somewhere at dusk, and the sound arrives twice, once itself and once off the ridge. Distance here is real, and it is also somehow negotiable. Midwinter is coming, and with it the visiting season. The strong ale that was brewed in autumn waits for it in the cool end of houses all along this shore. There will be sledges on the ice road, and songs in crowded rooms, and paths between farms stamped hard by many feet. The dark season packs people together, and the packing is half the point. There is one more light southward, where the strait narrows, and in summer that farm is the busiest spot on the shore, because they keep the ferry boat. Half the valley's errands cross in their steady old craft, paid in butter and news. In winter, the ferry sleeps in its shed like every other boat, and the ferry family, they say, enjoys the rest about as much as an innkeeper enjoys an empty inn, which is to say, for about a fortnight. News out here travels the way heat travels through a wall, slowly and surely and without any visible motion. A thing said at one hearth in autumn arrives at every hearth on the shore by midwinter, worn smooth by the journey, sometimes improved. Nobody carries it on purpose. It just moves, with the borrowed tools and the returned kettles and the children sent between farms. The valley has no roads to speak of, and no secrets whatsoever. And when the great gale 2 winters back took the roof off the mill house at the Narrows, the story goes quietly around every year about now. Timber came from 5 farms without being asked for. The roof was back on before the moon had turned, and the miller's wife fed half the coast under it while the work went up. Nobody on this shore calls that generosity. They call it winter sense. You mend your neighbor's roof for the plainest of reasons, which is that some year under some sky, the roof will be yours. The farmer has finished with the sky. Cloud is coming up from the sea, walking over the stars one by one, and the air has that held breath weight to it. He grunts the smallest possible weather report and closes the door and sets the bar in its cradle. What he actually says to the room in general is 2 words: wind later. And the household adjusts itself around those 2 words, the way bedding adjusts around a sleeper, without fuss, without discussion. The wood box is already full. The animals are already in. Let it come. That is the northern kind of company, and it never changed in 1,000 years. Enough space between houses that no one hears you argue. Enough lights across the water that you are never once alone in the dark. A whole valley sitting apart together, each fire keeping an eye on the others. One by one, as the evening deepens, those far lights will go out, the old man's first, the young couple's last. The same snow is falling on every roof of them, and under every roof of them, banked or blazing, watched or trusted, a fire holds. After supper, nobody rushes to sleep. There are 2 or 3 dark hours yet to fill, and on a winter farm they are filled by hands, quiet hands working small tasks in firelight while the mind rests. The North never wrote this down as wisdom, but it lived it every night. Busy fingers, they knew, are a kind of lullaby. The grandmother spins. Her spindle drops and twirls beside the bench, drawing gray wool into an even thread, and the motion is so old and so practiced that she never once looks at it. The wool passes through her fingers by feel alone. Click of the whorl, soft pull, and the thread grows, arm's length by arm's length. A winter's worth of clothing is beginning in her lap. The farmer's wife works with a single thick needle of bone, looping yarn into dense, warm fabric, a mitten taking shape around her hand. Up here they made mittens and socks this way long before knitting came. Loop through loop, tight enough to turn wind. A mitten like that outlives its first owner and gets passed down, patched at the palm. Across the fire, the eldest son mends the net that came up from the shore today. The net is draped over his knees like a sleeping animal, and he moves along it slowly, finding each torn mesh, closing it with a knot he could tie in complete darkness. By spring, the net must be whole. Spring is far away, so he works the way the winter itself works, without hurry. The farmer is carving a spoon. He turns the birch wood in the light, takes a curl off with the knife, turns it again. The shavings fall pale and curling by his boots, and they smell faintly sweet, like the inside of the forest in another season. A spoon takes him 3 or 4 evenings. There's no need for it to take fewer. The great loom stands against the gable wall, resting tonight, its stone weights hanging in a quiet row. On weaving days it thumps softly from morning to dusk, and the cloth grows downward, finger width by finger width. Everything anyone here wears began on that frame, or one like it. A shirt is not a purchase in this world. It is a season of a woman's evenings, and it is mended and mended again, and turned at the collar, and loved the way slow things are loved. By the hearth in a dry birch box lives the morning's fire kit, and filling it is the last small chore of every evening. Curls of bark, shavings from the farmer's spoonwork, splinters of fatwood that catch from a single spark. Beside it, the whetstone waits in its wooden trough. The farmer draws the axe across it a few times. Slow circles, more habit than need, listening to the stone the way you'd listen to a purring cat. The eldest son and the boy have the game bored out between them, a small wooden field of carved pegs. They play at conquering it in whispers. The rules are old, and the boy loses gladly, being still at the age where playing against a grown brother is itself the victory. Their pieces click on the board, patient as raindrops. You listen to the sounds all these hands make together. The whisper of the spindle, the small squeak of yarn drawn tight, the knife's short strokes, a log shifting in the long fire. It's almost a kind of music, though nobody here would call it that. They would just call it evening. Along the quiet end of the hall, the farmer has a length of rope growing, his other winter crop, horsehair saved from every combing of the old horse's tail, twisted strand on strand against itself, until it becomes something that will hold a boat. Rope of bast, stripped from lime bark and redded soft for the everyday hauling. In midwinter, when a long piece is wanted, the whole hall becomes a rope walk for an evening. One twister at each end, and everyone else stepping over the work and commenting on it. A farm can never own enough rope, and never has anywhere in the whole history of farms. The younger children have their own work, which is play that trains the hands. The boy is fletching a toy arrow with a real feather. The girl winds spun thread into a ball for her grandmother, and the ball must be tight and even, and she makes it so, tongue between her teeth, entirely serious. When the evening's work ends, it ends by settling, not by stopping. The spindle is speared upright into its wool, holding its place like a bookmark. The net is folded back over its beam for tomorrow's hands. The half-made mitten goes into the basket by the bench, needle tucked through the last loop. Nothing is finished tonight, and nothing needs to be. Work here is a river, not a race. It was flowing before everyone woke, and it will flow after everyone sleeps. The farmer blows the shavings from his lap into the fire, where they flare briefly, bright as a thought, and are gone. He turns the unfinished spoon once more in the light, thumbs the bowl of it, and sets it on the shelf beside 3 finished ones. Small makings like these travel far, in time. A spoon from a winter's evening ends up in a daughter's house across the valley, and her daughters after that carrying a little of this fire with it. Hour by hour, thread by thread, the household weaves itself towards sleep. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Inside, the fire holds and the hands slow down, one pair at a time. Watch the grandmother's hands a while longer, because there is more in them than wool. The thread she is drawing out tonight began its journey almost a year ago, out on the spring hillsides, and it has passed through every season since. Follow it backward, and you can walk the whole year without leaving the bench. It begins with the sheep themselves, in the lean, bright weeks of spring, when the winter wool loosens of its own accord. The old northern sheep shed like wild things, and their wool was combed and plucked away in handfuls rather than sheared. Each animal was held between the knees and grumbled at, and grumbled right back. A morning of that work leaves your hands soft with the grease of it, and smelling of sheep until midsummer, or so the complaint goes. Then the washing, down at the stream, in water that still remembers being snow. The wool is dunked and worked and wrung until it runs clear. It dries spread out on the sun-warmed stones, whole hillsides of it on a good day, like low clouds come down to rest. The smell of wet wool and thaw water is, for everyone raised here, simply the smell of spring itself. Sorting comes next, and sorting is wisdom. Coarse outer hair for sacking and rope, the soft underwool for everything that touches skin. The grandmother can grate a handful in the dark by touch alone, and does, and has never once in her life been argued with about it. Then summer lifts half the household up the mountain. High under the ridge there is a shieling, a summer farm, just a hut and a milking pen on the good high grass. The mother and the children spend whole weeks up there with the animals, milking morning and evening, making butter and soft cheese and skyr, and working wool in the long pale light that barely bothers to set. Down below the men cut hay. The year divides its labors, and the mountain smells of time. Some of the wool is dyed, and the dyes are the land's own. Birch leaves picked early give a soft pale yellow. The flat gray lichens scraped off the rocks, simmered slow, give rust and warm brown. The colors this family wears the way other families wear a name. On dye days the great pot claims the whole yard, and the smell of it announces the work to every farm downwind, none of whom need to be told what Tuesday it is. For red, though, the land offers nothing. Red comes off the trading ships, a dried root from far south, dear enough that it is bought by the handful and hoarded like coin. Red is for ribbons, for a welt on a feast-day tunic, for one proud stripe in a wedding blanket. A little of it goes a long way, which is fortunate, because a little of it is all there ever is. In autumn, by this same fire, the carding begins. Wool is worked between two combs until every fiber lies with its fellows, soft and orderly as combed hair, light as breath. The children are allowed to help, and allowed to fail, which is how the farm has always taught everything. A basket of carded wool sits by the grandmother now, cloud by patient cloud, and then the spinning, which is the winter's true harvest. A shirt's worth of thread is many evenings, a blanket's worth is a season, and a ship's sail, they reckon, took the spinning and weaving of many women through several years, which is worth remembering when you picture those sails crossing the gray sea. Every voyage this coast ever made hung on thread made exactly this way, by firelight at this speed, with these motions. At the gable end stands the loom, tall and patient, its warp threads weighted with hanging stones. Weaving days fill the house with a soft, thumping heartbeat from morning to dark, and the cloth grows downward finger width by finger width. The patterns are counted in the head, and to keep the count some women sing them, little worn smooth counting songs, half words and half habit. Cloth here is made partly of wool and partly of arithmetic, and such cloth was money, real money. In some northern lands, the law itself counted value in lengths of plain homespun, and a debt, a fine, a bride price could be paid in cloth off a loom like that one. A woman at her weaving was not passing the time. She was, quite literally, minting. Nothing woven here is ever quite finished with its work, either. A cloak becomes a child's coat, becomes a hood, becomes patches, becomes at last the rag that polishes the good knife. Collars are turned, elbows are doubled. A garment in this valley has as many lives as a cat, and ends its days honorably, still in service. Wool is not the only thread in the house, either. Down in the damp ground by the stream, a small patch of flax is grown most summers, pulled and retted and broken, and combed through more quarrels of work than wool ever asks for. And out of it comes linen. Linen is for underclothes, for the skin's own layer, cool and clean and kind. A person here wears the field next to their body and the pasture over it, and between the two of them is dressed for anything. The tools of all this work are small and precious, and outlive their owners. Needles of fine bone, kept in a hollow needle case that hangs at the belt, because a dropped needle in a dark house is an hour on your knees. Spindle whorls of stone, some of them older than the family itself, turned up by the plow and taken straight back into service. A good pair of wool shears is mentioned in wills. This is an economy where the means of making warmth are treasure, plainly and officially. And in the corner past the loom stands the carved chest with the good things in it. The feast cloth, the woven hangings that come out at midwinter, blankets too fine for every night, laid up in sweet herbs against the moths, waiting, as such chests wait in every age, for weddings. Some of what sleeps in there was woven by women 3 generations gone. When the girl by the fire marries, someday, far from tonight, cloth from that chest will go with her, and their hands will go with it. So look once more at what is happening on that bench. The spring hillsides, the cold stream, the high summer pastures, the dye pot, the autumn carding, all of it is running quietly through 2 old fingers and becoming next winter's warmth. The house, you could fairly say, wears its own meadows. The year does not end here. It just changes shape. Outside, the snow keeps falling on the sleeping pastures that grew all this wool. Inside, the year turns softly into thread, and the fire holds. Handwork loosens tongues. Everyone knows that. And there is a game these evenings that costs nothing, needs no light, and fits in the smallest corner of a working mind. Riddles. The North has passed them down the benches for as long as anyone can say, polished smooth as thumb-worn wood. The rules are old and gentle. You give the riddle low, almost to the fire. The guessers take their time, because taking your time is half the manners of it. A good guess is honored with a nod. A bad guess is enjoyed by everyone, including, eventually, the guesser. The grandmother starts, without looking up from her spinning. It hangs by the door, she says, and weeps all spring. The needles keep clicking. The boy narrows his eyes at the rafters, mouthing it over. An icicle, he says at last, and is right, and sits noticeably taller for the next little while. The farmer offers one from his own father. A bright guest sits in the middle of the house, eating and is never full, and dies of drinking. The girl knows this one. Everyone knows this one, but she is allowed to say it, because she is the youngest and the youngest gets the fire. She points at the long hearth with her chin, like a lawyer resting a case. Then the mother, folding the last of the mending, a gray bird with no wings, she says, born of a red mother, that flies up and never comes down. The eldest son answers, without lifting his eyes from the net. Smoke. His voice is so dry that it takes the room a moment to notice he was right, which is exactly how he likes his victories. One more, the grandmother's again, and older than all of them together. A bridge grows over black water, she says, with no hand to build it and no nail in it, and it carries the whole valley. The children answer together, because together is how they learned it. The ice, the winter bridge, the road to everywhere. Meanwhile, at the bench end, the board game has been going this whole time, and it has reached a delicate hour. The boy has spent a winter of evenings losing to his elder brother, with great consistency and greater stubbornness. Tonight, somehow, his little king stands one square from the safe corner, and his brother is studying the board with the slow care of a man checking his own arithmetic and not liking it. The move, when the boy finally makes it, is his own, found by himself, checked twice behind his teeth. The king slips home. There is a silence of the very best kind. The elder brother looks at the board, then at the boy, and gives him the single slow nod that men here give to a thing properly done. Across the fire, without seeming to watch, the farmer has watched all of it, and goes back to his whittling with something settled in his face. The girl, for her part, has her own game, older than boards. 5 small sheep's knuckle bones, boiled clean last autumn and kept since in a little pouch, tossed and caught on the back of a small hand to a muttered counting rhyme whose words wore out generations ago. Nobody remembers what the rhyme once said. The rhythm outlived the words, which happens to more things than rhymes. The stakes tonight, solemnly agreed beforehand, are these. The loser at the board fills the wood box after breakfast. The winner carries the honor, which weighs nothing and is worth more. Farms run on such currencies, and no king ever minted better. Games are little winters inside the winter, if you think about it. Storms with nobody chilled, sieges with nobody hungry, whole wars fought to a nod and a grin across a plank of carved squares. The people of this house can't cross the ice tonight, or sail anywhere, or change the weather by one flake. But on the board and in the riddles they roam. The board itself has a story, since everything in this house does. The grandfather carved it, they say, in the ice-bound week of a hard spring, when the boats couldn't launch and the fields couldn't drain, and a restless man needed somewhere lawful to put his hands. Squares scored true with the point of a knife, pegs whittled at odd evening moments for a year after. He played badly, by all accounts, and carved beautifully, and was thoroughly content with the trade. 2 more riddles go around while the pieces are gathered. The mother's, it walks all day on its head and never gets a headache. The boy chews on that one a long time before the eldest son takes pity. A boot nail, and the farmer's last one, the sleepy one, saved for late. It grows all winter, roof high, and dies of spring, and nobody mourns it. The girl, half in her mother's lap by now, answers into the wool. The snowdrift. Then she declines with dignity to open her eyes again. There is also, on request, 1 round of the endless game, the one with no board at all, where each player adds a piece to a story in turn. A ship, and on the ship a gray cat. And the cat, says the boy, is secretly the captain. It gets no further tonight. It never gets much further any night. And in this way it has remained excellent for about 30 years. By now the pieces are being dropped more than played, and one of them rolls under the bench and is left there for morning without debate, which is the truest clock in the house. Yawns are moving down the benches in order of age, youngest first, the way yawns do. The board is folded away on its shelf, pegs in their pouch. Outside the snow keeps falling, soft as a long story. Inside the fire holds and the evening leans, all of its own weight now, toward the telling. At some silent signal, the tools begin to rest. The spindle is stilled, the net folded back, the knife closed away. The children move closer to the grandmother's end of the bench, dragging a sheepskin with them, and settle at her feet with the certainty of people who know exactly what comes next. Every farm had its keeper of stories, and here it is her. There are no books in this house, no writing beyond a few scratched runes on a wooden lid. Everything this family knows about who they are lives in the memory of its oldest voice, and travels down the years by firelight, one telling at a time. She begins slowly, as she always does, with the naming of the land, who first cleared this hillside 4 lifetimes back, where his house stood, a stone's throw from this one, how he chose this spot for the spring behind it and the shelter of the ridge, and how the birch grove still growing by the path was young when he was young. Then the story leans outward, toward the sea. She tells of her grandfather's brother, who sailed south and east in the trading seasons, down the long rivers, to markets so far away that summer came earlier there. He brought back a silver coin with writing no one could read, and a story about cities with domes like golden hills. The coin was traded long ago. The story stayed. There are verses folded into the telling in the old tight-woven style, and she gives them slowly, 2 lines at a time, words fitted to words like planks in a hull. The children mouth along with the lines they know, because verse remembers better than prose, which is exactly why the old ones made law and lineage into verse. Rhythm was their parchment. A thing said in meter could cross 100 years and arrive unbroken. She tells how news itself used to arrive. In the open seasons, a sail on the fjord meant more than trade goods. It meant word from the wide world, carried mouth to mouth, who was married in the next district, what the assembly decided at midsummer, when free folk gathered on the law plain, and the year's disputes were spoken out loud and settled, what prices salt fetched in the south, all of it told by the fire, weighed, repeated, and folded into the family's store of knowing. She tells it all in a low, even voice, the voice people save for late evening, and the fire keeps time with her. When she pauses, the fire cracks softly, as if turning the page. The shadows of the roof posts lean in around the listeners, and the wind far up at the smoke hole hums one thin note. Then comes the story the children asked for, the one they always ask for. The winter, long before their mother was born, when the fjord froze from shore to shore, so hard and so clear that people walked across to the neighbor farms as if the sea were a white road. The grandmother was a girl then. She remembers lying on the ice over deep water, brushing the snow aside, and seeing fish move far below her face, slow as dreams. That was the winter. The whole coast visited each other, she says. Folk who had waved across the water for years finally sat at each other's fires. There was skating on bone runners and races, and an old man from the point who crossed every day just to lose at board games somewhere new. When the ice finally broke up in spring, with sounds like great doors closing, the fjord seemed lonelier for a while. The sea took back its road, but the friendships kept, she says. Those crossed anyway. Some of it is surely true. Some of it has grown taller with the years, the way stories do when they are loved. No one here would think to separate the two. A story kept a family's name warm through the centuries, and warmth in this country was never asked for its documents. She tells because it is winter and the season for it, of the whale year. The autumn her mother was young. A great whale stranded on the outer shore. The news of it went up the coast faster than any news before or since. A stranded whale was a winter's fortune lying on the sand, and the law of the coast was older than any of the farms. Every household got its share, measured and marked, down to the widow who could send no one to help with the cutting. That winter, she says, even the dogs grew fat, and the whale's great bones stood on the shore for years after, whitening, like the ribs of a ship the sea had decided to give back. She speaks briefly, too, of the old gods, the way one speaks of great weather. thunder that walks the mountains in summer, the long patience of the earth under snow. These are not lessons tonight, only familiar shapes in a familiar tale, and the children take them the way they take the dark outside, calmly, as part of the world. The boy's questions come slower, then stop. The girl's head has found the grandmother's knee. The story finds its quiet ending, a traveler home, a field cleared, a name remembered, and the teller lets her voice walk down the last few words like steps into a warm room. Outside, the snow keeps falling on 4 lifetimes of this family's land. Inside, the fire holds their story a little longer, and nobody moves just yet. And because nobody moves, she gives them one more, the short one, the house's own story. The children know every word of it already, which is precisely why they want it. The way you want the road home to look like the road home. Up the slope, she says, past the bath hut, there was another house once. You can still find it in summer, if you know where to look. A low green seam in the grass where the turf walls settled back into the hill they came from. Low and dark and warm, that house, older than anyone's counting. Her husband was born in it, so was his father. But roofs grow tired like backs do, and families grow larger like appetites. There came a good year, with a heavy hay harvest and a fair trading season, and timber promised from 3 households. And it was decided, in the unhurried way such things are decided here, over about 2 years of suppers, a new house, here on the shelf of land above the harbor, where the spring behind and the ridge above keep their double watch. The raising took a summer, and the whole shore took part. Neighbors came across the water with their tools and their opinions, both well sharpened. Oxen dragged the great roof posts up from the landing, and the long ridge beam was walked up the slope on the shoulders of 12 men moving like one careful animal. She was young then. She remembers the pale shavings curling ankle-deep on the trampled grass, and the smell of cut birch over the whole yard, and stealing looks at the man she would marry. When the last turf was laid on the roof, there was a feast, of course. Ale and singing and someone's uncle wrestling someone else's uncle into the stream, as is traditional. But the feast is not the part the children wait for. The part they wait for comes at the end of it, on the last evening, when the new house stood finished and empty on the hill, and the old house down the slope burned its final fire. Because you do not light a new house with a new flame. Not here, not then. That evening, the embers of the old hearth were gathered into an iron kettle and bedded down in their own ash, the way you'd wrap a sleeping child against the cold. And her husband's mother, whose hearth it had been for 40 years, carried the kettle down the slope in both arms, walking slow through the summer dusk, with the whole household following behind her and nobody saying one word. A house is only timber and turf, she used to say, until fire moves in. Then it is a home, and not before. In the new house, in the long stone trench that had never yet been warm, dry shavings were waiting. The old coals were tipped gently in among them, and breathed on and coaxed. And after a moment that everyone present remembered as lasting far too long, flame stood up in the new hearth. The same flame, moved not made, and the new house drew its first warm breath, and was a home from that hour. And before the old house, the children ask, as they always ask, right on time, where did the fire come from before that? The grandmother spreads her hands. Another hearth, she says, and before that another. Nobody can say how far back the chain runs, but the old ones used to tell that the first settlers on this shore carried fire around the land they meant to claim, so that flame and ground were married from the very beginning. And if that is so, she says, then somewhere in this hearth tonight there may be one spark, one that came ashore in an open boat a very long time ago. Nobody can prove it, she says, and nobody wants to. So when the fire is banked tonight, understand what is being tucked in down there under the gray ash. Not just this evening's coals. A guest that has been in the family longer than the family name. The oldest living thing on the farm, if you'll allow that a fire lives. And everyone here quietly does. Think what this one fire has presided over. In its 50 years under this roof, every child of the family has been carried to it, days old and shown to the warmth, and named aloud by it, because that is how naming is done here at the hearth before the household. Every wedding ale has been warmed at it. Every homecoming has steamed its boots dry at it. The fire has heard every saga this family owns, hundreds of tellings, and if fires remember, and the grandmother is privately certain they do, then it knows the stories better than she does. And once, just once, it nearly died. The children ask for this part too, in the hushed voice reserved for near things. The sickness winter, long ago, when for a week the whole household lay fevered at once and no one rose to feed the hearth, and the coals sank low and lower, and on the worst morning there was more gray than red. It was the old man from the point, crossing the ice with a pot of broth, who found the house silent, and fed the fire before he fed the family, in the correct order of rescue as this coast reckons it. The fire came back, then slower, so did everyone else. The iron kettle that once carried the embers down the slope hangs retired now, on its own peg at the gable end, polished, empty, permanently excused from work. Nobody cooks in it. Nobody would dream of it. Every house keeps one or two such objects, tools that did one great thing once and were pensioned like old hounds. The children were shown it before they were shown most things. The children look at the long hearth with different eyes now, as they do every single time. A thing with a story is never just a thing again. The flames look back, working away at a birch log with the patience of something that has never once been hurried. Outside, the snow keeps falling, as it fell on the old house up the slope, as it will fall on houses not yet built or thought of. Inside, the fire holds. It has been holding, one hearth to the next, for longer than anyone can count. The carrying of children to bed is the same in every century. The boy protests that he wasn't asleep, while being visibly asleep. The girl is lifted without waking at all, one arm hanging, still holding her ball of thread. Sleeping children are heavier than waking ones. Every parent in every age has known it, that boneless, trusting weight. Their bed is a wide wooden bench along the wall, boxed in with a low rail, deep in sheepskins and rough wool blankets. The blankets are the household's own making, spun and woven, and thickened by these same hands at this same fire in winters past. The wool still carries a ghost of lanolin, which keeps warmth in even when damp. Wool up here isn't fabric, it's survival made soft. The mother settles them in, pressing the blanket down along their sides the way you press turf onto a roof, snug against every draft. Under their heads, pillows stuffed with dried moss and feathers. Beside the boy, a small wooden horse, carved by his father 2 winters ago, worn shiny at the mane from being held. Before bed, there was the small washing, warm water from a pot by the embers, faces and hands, the day rinsed away. The boy gave his account of the afternoon at the shore, growing the fish a little with each telling, as is right and traditional. The girl showed her thread ball to everyone in turn. These small ceremonies matter more than they look. A day that is told at its end feels finished, and a finished day makes for easy sleep. They sleep in their soft undertunics of thin wool, worn smooth by washing. Over them the sheepskin first, fleece down, then the woven blankets, then, on the coldest nights, a fur robe over all, so that a child is not so much covered as harbored. The mother makes a small old sign over each of them, the kind her mother made over her. Where it comes from, nobody now asks. It means safe through the dark, and it has always meant that. She stays a moment, kneeling by the rail, not because anything needs doing, just to watch them breathe. The way parents have watched children breathe beside fires for 10,000 years. The firelight moves gently over their faces, and their faces do not move at all. At the foot of their bench, empty now for some years, stands the cradle, low, dark, worn glossy at the rockers, carved with a plain border by the same grandfather who made the game board. Every baby of this family for 2 generations has been rocked in it, beside this same fire, by every foot in the household in turn. Because a cradle by a hearth rocks itself into the family's habits, and everyone passing gives it a push whether it is occupied or not. It stands empty tonight, and it stands ready. Cradles are the most patient furniture there is. She hums a few lines, barely voiced, an old rocking tune with words half worn away. The tune is older than this house. Her own grandmother hummed it, and where it came from before that, no one recorded, and no one needs to know. Some things are passed down below the level of remembering. The little fish oil lamp near the children's bench is trimmed low, its flame drawn down to a bud of light, enough to find them by if the night requires, not enough to trouble their eyes. Their breathing has already found its slow, tidal rhythm, the sound of complete trust in a warm room. Across the fire, the parents talk a while in the lowest register of the voice, the one that carries a bench's length and no farther. Spring plans mostly, which field to rest, and where the new lambs will graze, whether the eldest son might sail with the traders this year, now that he's grown into his shoulders. The mother is for it and against it in the same breath, as mothers are. The words rise and fall softer and softer, the way a rocked cradle slows. It is a good hour, this one, and every parent in every age has known it. The day's work done and the day's people safe, all of them under one roof within one wall in one warm dark. Whatever the wide world is doing tonight, it is doing it somewhere else. Once from the bench, the boy surfaces halfway, eyes still closed, and asks the darkness whether the storm will be a big one. The farmer answers from across the fire, in the voice fathers keep for exactly this. Big enough, he says. Asleep. And the boy, fully satisfied with a forecast that told him nothing and everything, does. There is nothing in this world, of this age or any other, quite as persuasive as a child asleep nearby. The whole house lowers its voice around them. The clink of the poker grows careful. Even the dog, coming through to his place by the inner post, walks lightly, as if he too has agreed to it. Outside, the snow keeps falling past their little window of a smoke hole. Inside, the fire holds its light low, and 2 small sleepers ride the night the way boats ride at anchor. Past midnight, the wind arrives in earnest. You hear it first far off, a long, low breath over the ridge, and then it comes down the valley and takes hold of the night. The grandmother was right after all. The sky did have a waiting look. The house answers the storm the way an old ship answers a swell. The great roof posts take the weight and pass it down into the earth. The timbers creak once, here and there, testing, and then hold their peace. This house has stood through 50 winters of such nights. It knows this conversation by heart. Snow drives against the door curtain with a sound like thrown sand, softens and slides away. The smoke hole hums its thin flute note, and the smoke leans, steadies, and climbs on. Up on the roof, the snow load only grows heavier and quieter, a white blanket pulled tighter over the whole sleeping length of the house. And here is the strange gift of a storm. one that people have known as long as there have been walls. Bad weather outside makes the inside better. The same bench feels softer, the same fire warmer, the same blanket thicker, when the wind is refused at the door. Comfort is sweetest, with its opposite singing just beyond the wall. Strange thing about a snow night, even a wild one, it is never fully dark outside. The snow keeps every scrap of light the sky lets fall and hands it back doubled. So the smoke hole glows faintly gray even now, at the bottom of the night, in the middle of a storm. The old ones say a snow winter is a lantern winter. The black months are the bare ones, before the snow comes to light them. The dog lifts his head at one great gust, listens with professional attention, and decides against concern. He turns twice and lies back down, nose under tail. In the byre beyond the inner wall, a cow shifts her weight and size. The sheep press a little closer into their warm wool crowd. That is all the storm gets from them. On the north side, where the wind leans hardest, the snow is drifting up against the wall, and this is quietly welcome. A deep drift is another blanket. By morning, the house will be tucked into the eaves on that side, and the turf and the snow together will hold the hearth's warmth like cupped hands. The old builders knew which way the weather comes from. They set the door in the lee, and the byre to the north, and the house rides the storm the way a well-loaded ship rides a following sea. The grandmother, not asleep yet, names the wind to herself, as her people always have. This is the dry land wind, the one that scours and passes. It blows itself empty by morning. The wet sea wind is the one that lingers, and this is not that one. Weather here is read like a familiar face, and what can be read can be rested through. She turns over, satisfied with her reading. Somewhere in the roof over the byre, the storm finds one loose corner of birch bark and worries at it for a while, flap and settle, like a child picking at a scab. The farmer hears it from his bench, places it precisely and files it. A handspan of bark the third rafter, a morning's work with the ladder. Not tonight's problem. There is deep comfort in a problem that is definitely not tonight's. He falls asleep holding it, the way some people fall asleep holding the cat. The grown ones lie awake a while longer, listening, the way farmers always listen to weather, half asleep and half at watch. The farmer runs the ropes and racks and boat covers through his mind once more and finds them all secure, because he secured them himself. The thought is as good as a second blanket. His eyes close. There have been harder winters, of course. The old ones keep them the way they keep tools, taken down and shown now and then, so the young know such things exist. The year the drifts reached the smoke hole, and the household dug a snow tunnel to the byre and lived by lamplight for a month. Nobody tells those stories with dread. They tell them with a kind of pride, the pride of people whose house was tested and answered well. Down at the shore, the boats lie under their covers with the snow deepening over them, and the farmer's last waking thought brushes past them like a hand along a hull. Good ash frames, sound pine strakes, every seam gone over in autumn. Ships are wintered the way bears winter, fat with care, dreaming of open water. Let the storm pile snow on them all night. It is only tucking them in. Somewhere out in the dark, the storm owns everything, the ridge, the shore, the frozen fjord, the whole roofless world. Let it. Everything that needs keeping is kept in here, in the deep red glow. Outside, the snow is no longer falling. It is flying, and still inside the fire holds. Last of all the household, the grandmother rises for the fire's good night. This is her office, held for 50 years, and she would not dream of handing it on while her hands still serve. The long fire has burned down to a bed of embers now, breathing orange and dimming, like something falling asleep in its own slow way. Banking a fire is an art of patience. With the iron poker, she draws the embers gently together, out of the corners, and into one low mound at the hearth's heart. No stirring, no sparks. Embers pushed too hard burn out by midnight. Embers gathered kindly keep their heat until dawn, the way coals of a long life keep their warmth deep under the ash of years. Then, with the flat of an old wooden shovel, she lays the ash over them, a thin gray blanket drawn up around the glow, tucked at the edges, exactly the way the children were tucked in 3 hours ago. The brightness dims under it, sinks, and settles into a deep, patient red that will wait out the whole night underneath. This little mound is tomorrow sleeping. In the black cold before breakfast, someone will part the ash, lay dry birch shavings against the living coals, and breathe on them softly. And flame will stand up out of the ashes as it has 10,000 mornings running, and the house will go on. Nobody here has ever seen this fire cold. Their grandparents never saw it cold either. Even the ash's wealth, mind. Nothing that comes off this hearth is done working. The gray surplus, raked cool, goes to the soap barrel where it will meet autumn tallow and become next year's washing. A scoop goes onto the icy doorstep on the worst mornings, for footing. Some is strewn in the byre for sweetness, and the rest waits for spring, when it will be carried out and given to the garden plot, which repays ash and cabbages. The fire warms the house all winter, and then fertilizes its supper. Not many workers anywhere manage both. People here had sayings about embers, the way they had sayings about everything that mattered. That a fire well banked is a promise well kept, that you may lend a neighbor flame, but never the last of your own coals. Whether anyone truly followed such rules, no one now can say, but the sayings survived, which tells you how much the thought behind them weighed. She tended this hearth for the first time as a young bride, half a century ago. On her first night under this roof, she was terrified of letting it die, she has said, and lay listening to it until dawn. The fire outlasted the fear, and then it outlasted her husband, and it has quietly outlasted almost everything else she knew that year. It is not a sad thought, the way she carries it. Some things stay. You tend them and they stay. On her slow way back along the hall, she pauses once at the children's bench, tucks a blanket edge that did not need tucking, and stands listening to the 2 small breaths. Then she checks the fire kit box with her toe, finds it full, and nods to herself in the dark. Morning is provided for. That is what an evening is for. She stands a moment with both hands on the poker, looking down the dim length of the house, bench after bench of sleepers under wool, the loom at rest, supper's pot scrubbed and turned over, the bar firm across the door, and the storm arguing pointlessly with the roof. Everything in its place, and every place tested by 100 years of nights like this one. She pinches out the last small lamp, and the house goes down to ember light, that faint red memory of light along the hearth stones. It is enough. It was always enough. The old woman finds her own bench, eases down with a long breath, and pulls the sheepskin high. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Inside, the fire holds, banked and patient, keeping tomorrow warm under the gray ash. A house never sleeps all in one piece. Somewhere far past the middle of the night, in the deep of it, the eldest son surfaces from his sleep, quietly and completely, the way a seal surfaces. No noise woke him. Nothing is wrong. It is only the old habit of houses like this one, that someone, once in the night, should look. He sits up into darkness, so complete it has texture. The hearth is a long, faint seam of red down the middle of the floor, and everything else is memory. He moves through the house like a man reading a page he wrote himself. 4 steps roof post turn. His feet know this floor asleep, which is convenient because they are. The sounds of the house arrive one at a time, now that no daylight is there to crowd them. The braided breathing of the sleepers, each thread of it known to him by name, the tick of the cooling ash, and the storm still out there, but older now, its gusts arriving farther and farther apart, like a drummer growing tired of his own tune. He crouches at the hearth and holds one palm flat above the ash mound, not touching, just asking. The warmth rises into his hand, steady and patient. The banked coals doing exactly what his grandmother promised they would do, what they have done every night of his life. All well. He was sure of it before he checked. He checked anyway. That is the whole art of living here, in one small motion. At the inner door to the byre he stops and eases it open the width of 2 fingers, and listens. The night breath of the animals comes through the gap, deep and grassy and slow. A dozen sleeps braided into one. A sheep's bell knocks once against wood, muffled in wool. The old horse shifts his weight from 3 legs to the other 3, with a sound like a sigh deciding not to bother. The good machine of the byre, turning over slowly in the dark. On the way back he stops at the water crock and dips the ladle and drinks. The water is cold enough to ache in the teeth, and tastes faintly of iron and of snow, which is to say, of winter itself. Water drunk standing in the dark in a sleeping house is a particular drink. Every person who has ever done it knows this, and none of them has ever managed to say why. Above him, the smoke hole is a small coin of gray-blue, the first he has seen of the sky since dusk. As he watches, the racing cloud thins for a moment, and one star comes through, sharp as a nail point, and is smothered again. The storm's cloth is wearing through. By morning it will be rags. He thinks nothing much, these minutes. This hour has no thoughts in it, only checks, the mind idling at its lowest flame. Fire, animals, water, sky. The 4 questions of the night, each answered the same way. All well. All well. There is a prayer in some countries that says scarcely more. The floor itself keeps his secrets, and he keeps its. He knows the board by the meal chest that complains if you take it flat-footed, and takes it on the edge instead, silent as thought. He knows where the earthen floor dips by the loom, and rolls his step over it. 50 years of feet have negotiated this path in the dark, and every one of them left notes. He is only the latest reader of a very old book. At the grain chest he pauses, and lays one hand flat on the lid, not opening it. There is no need. He knows what is in it to the sack. Everyone does. The household's arithmetic is public, but a hand on the lid in the dark says something account cannot. Enough. Enough until spring, with care and no bad luck. The chest says nothing back, which from a grain chest is good news. And standing there a moment, in the middle of his sleeping inheritance, he thinks the thought he only thinks at this hour. Someday, some summer, he will raise a house of his own, on the good shelf of land south along the shore that his father has mentioned twice, carefully, both times at haying, and on the last evening before he moves into it. Someone will bed coals from this hearth into a kettle, and he will carry his family's fire along the shore road, walking slow. He can see the whole evening already. He has never told a living soul. Passing the children's bench, he pauses, uncle-wise, and looks. 2 heads, 2 sets of slow breath, one wooden horse standing guard on its side. He draws the blanket edge a finger higher over the boy, who at once burrows it off again, on principle, without waking. Honor is satisfied on both sides. Then he is back under his own sheepskin, which has kept his warmth and his shape like a patient friend, and sleep takes him before he has fully finished lying down. Between one breath and the next, he is gone into whatever waters he surfaced from. Some houses post guards. This one posts love, once a night with its boots off. It has proven over 50 winters, entirely sufficient. Outside, the storm is spending the last of itself against the ridge. Inside, the fire holds, checked and found faithful, holding the house's warmth down the dark slope of the night toward morning. Come outside for a moment. Only a starry can open this door without waking anyone, so let the starry do it. Rise over the sleeping benches, out through the turf and the timber and the snow weight, into the yard, into the enormous night. Don't worry about your boots. Tonight you weigh nothing at all. The storm is gone. It has taken its clouds and its noise down the coast to spend them on somebody else's headland. And what it has left behind is a sky swept perfectly clean, and a cold with no wind in it at all, the deep, still, ringing cold of a cleared winter night. Clear nights burn coldest. The valley knows it and lies extra still, and above the valley stars, not the modest handful that towns are permitted, thousands upon thousands, layer behind layer, down to dust, the whole held breath of the sky at once. People raised under such stars never quite believed the sky was empty. You can stand here a minute and understand them completely. Across the top of everything runs the long pale river, the great soft road of light that every people on earth has walked something along. What the folk of this valley called it, no one wrote down in time. A road, some said, later and elsewhere. A river of souls, said others in other lands. Stand under it on a night like this, and every one of those guesses seems reasonable, and none of them seems large enough. There, swinging high over the ridge, the 7 bright stars that these people read as a wagon, rolling its slow, eternal circle, and near the middle of the sky's turning, hangs the one still star, the nail, some northerners called it, the nail of the world, that all the rest of heaven wheels around without ever working loose. The sky turns. The nail holds. A very old comfort that. Some things do not move, so that everything else safely can. There are no clocks in this valley, not one, and no one has ever missed them. The sky is the clock. The wheeling of the wagon around the nail tells the watches of the night to anyone awake enough to look. Shepherds and sailors and grandmothers read it as easily as you read a face. Right now it says, to those who can hear it, that the night is past its deepest, and morning is on the road, and there is no hurry at all. The moon is late and low, just clearing the shoulder of the ridge, and where its light lands, the snow turns silver blue and throws long, soft shadows from every fence post. Moonlight on fresh snow is nearly bright enough to read by, they say, though nobody wastes it on reading. It is for walking home through and for looking at, and tonight for us it is all ours. Listen, far up the hillside, a tree cracks in the frost, one clean knock, like a door closing in an empty hall. Out on the fjord the new ice booms once, softly, settling itself. A long, low note that rolls from shore to shore and fades. These are the valley's night noises. And notice, every one of them is structural. Nothing out here is stirring. Even the sounds are just the world flexing in its sleep. Now turn and look back the way we came. There it is. The house. From out here it is only a white mound among white mounds. A whaleback of snow with turf underneath. You would walk past it in the dark, except for one thing. At the crown of it, at the smoke hole, there glows a single seam of amber, the one warm color in the entire visible world. All that fire, all that wool, all those sleepers. From out here it is one gold stitch in a black and silver country. The smoke rises from it straight as a plumb line, pale against the stars, not a waver in it. Every farmer on this shore reads that sign the same way. Wind gone, weather settled. Tomorrow will be still, and bright, and very cold. The kind of day where the whole fjord glitters and every axe stroke rings twice. Good sledging weather. Good visiting weather soon. And under this same sky, this exact wheel of stars. The ships of this coast found their way across open ocean to lands they had no maps for. They read the nail and the wagon and the long pale road. Sky like this is the one heirloom that comes down to every generation whole. Not a star missing, not a light dimmed. The children asleep under that roof will inherit it entire, and never once think to be grateful, which is exactly how the best inheritances work. The people here divided the night into watches, each with its old name, read off the wheeling sky. The names are mostly worn away now, like the words of the counting rhyme. But the habit of the thing survives in every farmer who wakes, looks at the stars through the smoke hole, and knows to the hour how long till milking without ever being taught how he knows. The night has rooms in it up here. You learn your way around them, the way you learn a house. Something crosses the yard below you, and it is the only moving thing in the world. An owl hunting the drifts, flying its slow patrol on wings that make no sound whatsoever. None. A softness the best boat builder on this coast could not engineer in 100 years. It tilts once over the byre roof, finds nothing worth a stoop, and dissolves into the dark along the stream. The night resumes its stillness, as if the interruption had been filed and approved. In cold this deep, they say, on the very stillest nights you can hear your own breath freeze, a faint whisper as the cloud of it turns to ice dust around your ears. The stars' own sound, some called it. Whether that is weather or poetry, no one has ever firmly settled. Standing here, weightless in a story, you are not equipped to test it. It is enough that generations of real shoulders shrugged deeper into real wool at exactly this hour, under exactly this sky, and heard something. And mark those stars once more before we go down, because they are working stars, not ornaments. Off this coast, men steered whole summer voyages by the nail and the wagon, by sun height and swell and the flight lines of shore birds, out to islands beyond islands and back, without one written chart among them. The sky you are looking at was their instrument. The children under this roof will learn it as an instrument, the way children elsewhere learn letters. That is enough sky. It will be here tomorrow and every night after. Come down now, down through the still cold, back through the snow weight and the turf, into the dark, warm breathing hall, to the red seam of the hearth. The great cold stays outside where it belongs, wearing its silver. You have a bench with your name on it. Above the roof, the stars wheel slowly around their nail, keeping the only time that matters tonight. Below them, the snow lies still at last, and inside, as ever as always, the fire holds. What the sleepers of this house dream on this night 1,000 years ago, no one recorded, and no one ever could. But a story that has come this far is allowed to guess, so long as it guesses kindly. So, softly, guess along. The farmer dreams of summer work, because that is what his hands love best. The scythe going easy through heavy grass, swing after swing after swing, the whole hillside falling sweet and in order, and no ache anywhere, because work in dreams weighs nothing at all. Somewhere in the dream his father leans on a fence, watching, saying nothing, approving. The fence has been gone 30 years. In dreams good fences keep. His wife is at the shieling, in the high summer light, bare feet on cool turf, the milk pails heavy in the good way, the whole mountain smelling of thyme and running water. Her children are small again up there, all of them at once, every age of them together, underfoot and shouting, in the way that is only possible in dreams, where time stops being a road and becomes a meadow. She is laughing at something one of them said. Her sleeping face back here in winter very nearly does it too. The eldest son dreams of open water. Of course he does. The pull of a sheet in his fist, the particular lift of a hull meeting the first true sea swell past the headland, and ahead, low and blue and nameless, a coast he has never seen. Spring is already awake in him, weeks ahead of the calendar, whatever the snow outside may have to say about it. He sleeps grinning very slightly, like a man with a good secret. The boy is skating. It is the famous ice winter, the one from the stories, the one he missed by being born too late. And in the dream this injustice has finally been corrected. Black glass from shore to shore, the whole fjord one road, and under his feet, deep beneath the clear ice, the slow dark fish are moving like thoughts. He is fast in the dream. He is the fastest anyone has ever been. His feet twitch under the blanket, working the turns. The girl dreams of her ball of thread. It has unrolled itself, and the thread has turned red, feast-red, ship-red, and it runs away from her over the snow, over the hills, out along the whole coast of the world. In the dream she follows it, hand over hand, entirely unafraid because a thread, as everyone in her family has always known, leads to things. She will find out what things. She has years. The grandmother sleeps lightest of all, up on the surface where dreams and memories share a bed, and honestly, at her age, she no longer sorts them. A girl again, for a moment, on the frozen fjord of her own famous winter, wind in her wool hood, the ice singing its long note underfoot, then simply the fire, the long red line of it, every winter's fire she has ever kept, all of them somehow the same fire, which, as she herself would point out, is not a dream at all. It is just the truth resting. The dog dreams of the yard naturally, since the yard is his profession. His legs paddle. His lip flickers over a half-voiced, extremely formal complaint, addressed to a dream trespasser who has no business among his wood piles. Even asleep, he is on duty, especially asleep. Beyond the wall, in the warm dark of the byre, who can say whether cattle dream? If they do, it is surely of grass, deep, endless summer grass, which is the whole of a cow's poetry, and none the worse for that. The sheep, perhaps, dream the flock itself, the warm arithmetic of being many, packed close, all one wool. The old horse dreams standing up, as horses do, which means no one will ever know. He has earned his privacy. And the house, if you'll allow it, dreams too. Its timbers ease, fiber by fiber, the slow structural dream of standing. The turf holds its breath of summer soil under all that snow. The frost tests every joint once and finds them all answered. Houses this old are not quite things anymore, and everyone who lives in one knows it, and pats the doorpost now and then, in passing, the way you'd pat a horse. So many dreams under one roof. Count them like coins. A meadow, a mountain, a sea road, an ice road, a red thread, a lifetime of fires, a defended woodpile, a world of grass. Not one monster among them, not tonight. Long winter nights make gentle dreamers of tired people, they say here. Mostly they say it while yawning. And you, listener, you have been in this house all evening by the door, by the fire, out under the stars, and no one here ever minded, because a story is always one guest over the count. Soon you will drift off too, wherever your bed is. And if there is any justice in the economy of dreams, some small thing from this house will go with you. The click of the whorl, maybe, the smell of birch smoke, a red thread over the hills, Take whichever one is nearest. They have plenty. Dreams were taken seriously here, it should be said. A strong one was told at breakfast, and turned over by the whole table like a find washed up on the shore. Some were kept and consulted for years. So dream something worth the telling, if you can manage it, and if you can't, dream of grass like the cows do. Nobody in this house would think one bit less of you. Outside, the stars keep their slow watch over all of it. Inside, the fire holds, warm under its gray blanket, and over the fire the house dreams on, all together, down the last quiet hours toward morning. There is an hour deep in the night that belongs to no one. The storm is a memory now, somewhere far down the coast. The wind has fallen to nothing. Even the sea ice has finished its settling and lies silent. The world outside is one soft, white, breathless thing waiting. Inside the longhouse, the darkness is complete except for the low red line of the banked hearth, and the sounds are so small they are almost thoughts. A sleeper turning under wool, the tick of an ember beneath the ash, a mouse somewhere by the meal chest, conducting its own tiny economy, the deep, slow breathing of the byre through the wall, cows and sheep and horse all keeping the one unhurried time. Every person under this roof is asleep now. The farmer, with his ropes and racks all safe in his mind, his wife, one arm toward the children's bench, even in sleep, the eldest son, dreaming perhaps of open water and the nets of spring, the children, deep in the dreamless dark of the very young, and the grandmother, lightest sleeper of all, resting on the surface of the night like a leaf on still water. 1,000 years stand between their night and yours. Everything about the world has changed, the tools, the maps, the light we wait under. And yet this hour has not changed at all. A warm room in the cold, sleeping people, safe near a kept fire, the quiet certainty that morning will come, and that someone will wake the flame. Stay with the sounds a moment, and let them go one by one. The tick of the embers, growing rarer, release it. The breathing of the byre, release it. The last of the wind, walking away down the coast, let that go too. What remains is the sound a warm house makes with everyone asleep, which is almost no sound at all, only a fullness in the dark, like a held note too low to hear. On some winter's nights here, they say, pale green light rivers across the whole sky, silent, folding and unfolding above the snow. The old ones read many things in it, and no one now can say for certain what they truly believed. Tonight there is only the dark and the thinning cloud, and stars where the storm was. That is enough sky for one night. High in the smoke hole, if you were awake to see it, a few sharp stars stand in the small dark opening. The gray of morning is still far off, down beyond the edge of the world, taking its time. Let it take its time. Nothing here needs it yet. And you, listener, wherever your bed is tonight, you have your own version of all of it. A door that is closed, a roof that holds, some small warm light you trust to keep till morning. The shapes have changed in 1,000 years, but the night has not, and the needs have not. You are doing now exactly what they are doing in that dark hall, giving the day up, letting the house stand watch. So let it stand watch. Whatever you carried today, set it where the farmer set his ropes and racks, all checked, all done enough, all safe until the light. Nothing more is asked of you tonight than is asked of the sleeping children by the wall. Breathe the way the byre breathes, slow and slower. The farm will wake later, to shoveled paths and steaming animals and flame breathed up from the coals. But that is another story, a daytime story, and it can wait for the light. You don't have to be there for it. You can stay here in the warmest hour, where nothing is asked of anyone. Outside the snow lies still, and the hills stand sharp under the stars. Inside the fire holds, deep under the ash, keeping its small red promise until morning. The snow rests. The fire holds. The world can wait until morning. This was Worlds Before Morning. Good night.